Hello crafty friends and welcome back to my channel. Today we will be creating some beautiful and colorful cards using layering stencils. Now the products that I'm using today are from the latest Rain or Shine release by Simon System. Now this release is loaded with summer and spring themed products. We have beautiful embossing folders, bunnies and underwater adventures, layering stencils, stamp, dies and stencil bundles and lots more. Before we take a look at all those beautiful products, I would really appreciate if you could take a minute to subscribe to my channel and hit on the bell icon so that you get notified every time I post a new video. Now, here are some of the products that I received by Simon System, which are from the new Rain or Shine release. Now, we have a couple of stamps here, an embossing folder with a die cut, and this beautiful stencil that we will be using for our cards today. Let us first take a look at the Argyle Builder Stencil. Now this is what we will be using for all our cards today. This includes three 6x6 stencils which will help us create beautiful Argyle patterns. You can use two different shades to color in the diamonds, and for the third stencil, which has the crisscross stitching pattern, you could either use ink blending, pastes, or even heat embossing. This would be perfect to create beautiful and colorful card backgrounds. I have created two cards using these beautiful backgrounds and some fun color combinations. For my third card, I did do some masking on that stencil. Well, the next product that we have is the Cuddly Bundle Wafer Die. Now, this set has two dies, which helps you create an adorable little bunny that would be perfect for your spring cards. You can assemble these to create a bunny with a soft rounded belly, puffed tail, and those cute little bunny ears. You could layer them using pattern papers or use some textured cardstock for an added dimension, or just go the old fashioned way by using some colored cardstock or do your ink blending. Next, we have the brilliant budding floral embossing folder and cutting die. Now, this will create three beautiful blooms with a thin stem on each of those blooms. It also includes a coordinating die that allows you to cut one of those blooms, adding an extra dimension and versatility to your card front. Now, when using the embossing folder and the cutting die, I would recommend first die cutting the image and then running it through the embossing folder. This will prevent flattening of those beautiful textured embossed images. You can use markers, pencil colors, or even paints on these textured backgrounds with beautiful colors. For me personally, I love doing the blackout technique on these beautiful embossed backgrounds. Let me know in the comments down below what is your favorite way to enhance the details on such textured and beautiful embossed backgrounds. I use my Spellbinder's Platinum 6 machine. So with that, I usually have the platform base, then the folder over which I place my cutting plates. I will have a link below with helpful sandwich recipes using the Simon System 3D embossing folders and your die cutting machines. Next, we have the Mod Plant 6x8 stamp set, which gives a beautiful modern touch to your floral cards. We have 5 floral designs, which would be perfect to create some clean and simple minimalist cards. Complementing the contemporary design, we have some bold sentiments, the bigger sentiments, which is hello and friend, and some sub greetings, which include you made my day, you make me smile, you brighten my day, and thankful for you. This would be perfect to create single layered cards. Now, this does come with coordinating die sets and the Mod Plants block stencil, which will help you create striking and graphic backgrounds for these floral images. Next, we have the Get Well Soon stamp, which I feel is the cutest stamp set in my collection. This set features adorable whales along with some little fishes and coral reef and some bubbles, which is perfect to create an underwater adventure. This would be absolutely perfect to create a Get Well Soon card or even a birthday card. Last but not the least, I have the Happy Bee Day stamp set. This is a small 3 by 4 inch stamp set for your fun bee themed projects. The focal point image is this beautiful little bee wearing a tiny crown and holding a honeycomb shaped balloon. We also have some looping bee trails, a tiny little bee, honeycomb clusters, and some fun adorable sentiments. Let us now get started with our projects. I will be creating 3 cards today using the Argyle Builder Stencil. I'll be batch producing these, which means that I will be first creating all of my backgrounds and then I will move on to the focal points and finally I'll have my sentiment. Starting with my backgrounds, Here, this Argyle Builder Stencil has three layers, two of which are the diamond shape, and the third stencil is the one with the crisscross pattern. I like to use my Simon's stamp sticky mat, which is perfect to hold my cardstock and the stencil in place while I ink blend on them. Now I'm using an A2 size white cardstock for my backgrounds, and I will be later trimming all of these panels to measure 4 by 5 and quarter, which is a quarter inch smaller than the A2 size panel. For my first background, I decided to go with yellow and peach for the diamond layers and beautiful sage green for the stitched pattern. The color combinations that I've used here for all of my backgrounds today are very new to me. I have paired yellows with pinks and oranges in the past, but never with this beautiful blush shade. I love that this is very close to orange, but not as dark and vibrant and has more peachy undertone to it. I started with this beautiful yellow citrine. I used my ink blending brush to evenly spread out the ink on all of the exposed surface of the paper. Now, whenever I'm using my sticky mat, I like to have the plastic sheet on the back of the sticky mat. This makes sure that I can move around the mat while I'm ink blending and that my mat is not stuck on my work surface. Now, since we will be creating more than one background, I will first make sure that I clean the stencil before moving on to stencil number 2. Usually, I would just keep it away and take all of the stencils together and wash it under some running tap water. But here, what I'm doing is I place my stencil over one of the microfiber cloths by Simon's Stamp. I then sprayed the stencil with some plain water using my spray bottle. And then I use another microfiber cloth to wipe away all that water and color from the stencil. This I feel is the quickest way to clean your stencils. I will set this aside to dry while we use our next stencil to complete the background. For layer number 2, I will be using Peachy ink, which is this beautiful peach shade that I feel complements perfectly with the yellow. Now, these positively saturated inks might look a little splotchy at first, but once the ink settles into the paper, you will get a seamless, smooth looking ink blended background. Now, I cleaned the stencil too before I moved on to my third stitched pattern stencil. For this one, I used Sage ink. I went back and forth with my mini ink blending tool and the regular one, and I found that the mini ink blending tool was a lot more easier to get into those tiny little spaces. You could also use your gels and pastes or even add your embossing powder to this third layer. Here's a look at the finished background. I love this beautiful color combination. This is something that I will definitely note down and probably use in my future projects. Now, like I mentioned before, we will be creating all of our backgrounds first. For the second card, all of the technique remains the same. We just have new set of colors. Now for card number 2, I will be using lighter shades of pink and orange. We have bubblegum and melon, and for the stitching layer, I have used flannel, which is the lighter shade of gray that I have in my positively saturated ink collection. Once I have ink blended on this panel, I noticed that the flannel ink was either heavily pigmented or I must have used extra pressure while ink blending. Some of that ink got out of the stencil area, but we will fix that in our finished card. Card number 3 is slightly different than the previous two cards. Here, instead of creating an entire background, I'll be masking parts of the stencil to create a pattern for our card front. Also, I'll be using two stencils instead of all three. I will start with one of the diamond stencils and the stitch pattern stencil. Now, I plan on creating an underwater themed birthday card, so I'll be using some beautiful shades of teal to ink blend on this panel. I used seafoam for the diamond and dark ocean to create the stitched pattern look. I began by masking one strip of the pattern onto my card panel. Now make sure that your card panel is perfectly aligned to the stencil, making sure that this pattern is in a straight line. I use some masking tape to mask off the remaining of the stencil and blended seafoam on the first layer. I did the same masking on the stitched pattern stencil as well. And then using my mini detailed ink blending brush, I added ocean ink to create this beautiful pattern. I love the clean and simple look on this card front. So when you're using a background stencil, it's not necessary that you create an entire background out of it or use all the stencils that is included in the pack. Well, you can mismatch or mask or use just some parts of the stencil to create your own pattern, your own backgrounds. I love how these three backgrounds turned out. It's not just the pattern, but also the color combination looks absolutely beautiful. Once my backgrounds were done, it was now time to work on the focal points. Off camera, I went ahead and colored and die cut all of the focal points for the cards and also stamped and heat embossed some sentiment strips. I will take the pink and orange background first. For this card, I used the Cuddly bunny die set and created a cute and adorable little focal point bunny sitting on some leaves that I cut out using the leafy sprig die. For my sentiment, I stamped the Thankful for You sentiment from the Mod Plant stamp set onto a strip of black cardstock. I heat embossed the sentiment using a white embossing powder. Note that before adhering all of the focal point and the sentiment strips, I did trim the panels to be 4 by 5 1 quarter, which is slightly smaller than a standard A2 size card base. Then, using some foam tape, I adhered this panel onto a top folding A2 size card base. Moving on to card number 2, which is the background that I created using the yellow citrine and peach ink. I decided to keep this card very simple and add just a sentiment strip on the center of this card panel. I stamped and heat embossed the Sending Hugs sentiment from the Hoppy Days Ahead stamp set, which is one of the older stamp sets by Simon. I adhered this onto the center of this card panel and mounted this on top of a top folding A2 size card base. For card number 3, I have some cute and adorable whales that I stamped and colored, and using my brother's Canon cut, I cut out all those images. Now, these are from the new Get Whale Soon stamp set, which I showed earlier in the video. I also stamped and heat embossed the Have a Really Good Birthday sentiment onto a strip of black cardstock. I love how cute and adorable this looks. I used tiny foam squares to adhere all of these elements onto the card front, and then using liquid glue, I adhered the card front onto a vibrant blue top folding card base. Here's a look at all of the finished cards. Well, initially I thought of leaving these cards as is, but later I decided to add some bling on each of these cards. I used my beautiful positively dazzling gems, which come in a variety of different colors that add a touch of sparkle to all of your crafting projects. My absolute favorite would be the light pink gems on my bunny card. Which one's your favorite? Do let me know in the comments section below. Well, thank you for joining me today, and I hope you had fun watching the video as much as I had fun creating these cards. I will have links to all the products that I used to create these cards and will link to the latest Rain or Shine release by Simon Says Stamp. Please note that all of these links are affiliate links, which means that if you shop using one of my links, I get a small commission at no cost to you guys. Thank you again for joining me today. Until next time, stay safe.